and to keep other groups of people based on skin color from having power. And a whole lot of you believe that crap. How long are you going to believe that? How long is it going to be before you say to yourself, this is nonsense? I am this color because my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was this color, and so, my friend, was yours. And so was mine. I am a descendant of those first black females. And so is every person in this room a descendant of those first black females. And we are all members of the same race. And in the Bible, where it talks about the family of man, it is talking about the fact that we all belong to the same family because we're all descendants of the first modern human beings that evolved on the face of the earth. Now you're going to get tired of hearing that, and I know it, and I don't care. Because I'm tired of hearing the other side, which is a lie. It's a flat-out lie. To believe that there are 4 or 5 different races on the earth, to believe that myth is just as ignorant as believing the Greek myth that said that God is, the sun is a god in a golden chariot that goes across the sky every morning. That's not what the sun is. I've been there, I know. I was a waitress at the Last Supper. Why are you laughing about that? Don't I look like it? People, you need to realize that you've been lied to, your parents were lied to, your grandparents were lied to, and you are lying to your children if you allow them to believe that myth. Now, if you want young black boys to act as good as they can, and to be all that they can be, you've got to stop letting them believe in the myth of white superiority.
The mirror of society, often polished to a sheen of self-congratulatory progress, cracks and splinters when confronted with the raw, unfiltered truth about racism and white supremacy. Jane Elliott, a teacher who dared to shatter that polished surface, provides a stark and unflinching reflection of our collective failings. Her work, a crucible of uncomfortable truths, forces us to confront the insidious nature of prejudice, not as a historical artifact, but as a living, breathing entity within our contemporary world. Are we truly ready to look into that mirror, to see the distorted image of ourselves that stares back? The question hangs in the air, a challenge to our complacency, a call to action. Elliott's Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes exercise, a visceral experience designed to simulate the arbitrary nature of discrimination, transcends mere academic discussion. It plunges participants into the heart of systemic prejudice, revealing the psychological and emotional toll of being labeled inferior based solely on the color of one's eyes. This exercise is not a comfortable viewing experience, nor is it meant to be. It is a jolt, a shock to the system, designed to dismantle the very foundations of our preconceived notions about race and privilege. Can we, as passive observers, truly grasp the lived reality of those who endure such treatment daily? The power of witnessing such an experience is profound and essential to understanding the depth of the problem. The concept of white supremacy, often cloaked in the language of subtle bias and unconscious prejudice, is laid bare by Elliott's relentless questioning. She exposes the ways in which societal structures and individual behaviors perpetuate a system where whiteness is equated with normalcy, superiority, and privilege. This is not about individual malice, but about the insidious nature of a system that rewards and punishes based on an arbitrary characteristic. How deep does this conditioning run? How much of our own behavior is influenced by these unseen, yet powerful, biases? These are the questions that will haunt you after watching her work. Elliott's confrontational approach, while often met with resistance, is a necessary catalyst for change. She refuses to allow her audience to remain comfortable in their ignorance. The challenge she poses is not merely intellectual, but deeply personal. It forces us to examine our own complicity in a system that perpetuates inequality. Are we willing to step outside of our comfort zones, to confront our own biases, and to actively work towards dismantling the structures that uphold white supremacy? The video, and the message, is a call to action. Prepare yourselves, for what you are about to witness is not a gentle lecture, but a powerful confrontation with the harsh realities of racism.
Except in my case. No, people, we've got to get over the myth of white superiority, because if you don't, we're all going to be in really big trouble in about 30 years. Because demographics in this country say that within 30 years, white people will have become a numerical minority in the United States of America. Now, folks, what that means is that people of other color groups are going to be running this show. Now you think about another 30 years of a country being run before he said, there's some good people on both sides of that riot. Somebody sure told him that. A man is judged by the company he keeps. Those of you who thought that every one of those fools must like Nazis and KKK members should have realized that a man is judged by the company he keeps. You have the right to judge people as being like the people they spend time with. And now some of you are thinking, well, he was a man of cliches. The difference is he lived by those cliches. He lived by those cliches. And he used to say every week, a fair thing is a pretty thing, and a right wrongs no man. Now, it might impoverish you, it might anger you, it might frustrate you, but if it's right, it won't wrong you. Now, people, you need to remember that. A fair thing is a pretty thing, and a right wrongs no man. I went into my classroom that morning. Stephen Armstrong, the first student in the room, came in and said, hey, Elliot, they shot that king last night. Why did they shoot that king? I said, we're going to talk about that, Stephen. So after we had done the things you have to do first thing in the morning, we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, with the words under God in it. How many of you know when the words under God were put in the pledge? Anybody? When? Don't raise your hand and then scratch your head. You'll get slivers under your fingernails. What? About 51 or 52, wasn't it? Dwight Eisenhower put the words under God into the pledge. Until then, people, we said the pledge without the words under God in it. That's why you can't trust anybody over the age of 55. Because we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag without the words under God in it, and it messed up our minds. You need to remember that. We said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and we all put our hands over our hearts on the left side, but we had one kid who came in and put her hand over her heart on the right side, and I said, put your hand on the left side. Put your hand on the left side. Why not? My heart's on the right side. It was. The doctor told me, her heart's on the other side. Leave the kid alone. Her brain was somewhere that didn't belong to, but at least she got... No, she was a very bright child. So then after we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, we sang God Bless America. Now when you sing God Bless America, who are you talking to? God bless America. Who are you talking to? God. When you talk to God, what are you doing? Praying. What are you not supposed to do in school? I broke the law every morning. We sang God Bless America. And the kids loved it, and I loved it, and we sang it loudly. And we should have been doing it, because there were kids in that room who did not believe in God. How many of you know somebody who doesn't believe in God? How many of you know somebody who calls God Allah? How many of you think that person has the right to call God what they want to call God? How many of you think somebody has the right not to believe in God at all? How many of you think that God is a spirit and has neither color nor gender? Yeah, folks, God is a spirit and has neither color nor gender. Except she might be a black woman. Since the Bible says God made humans out of God's own image. A myth. Now, I'm not saying this because I want to help black folks. I'm saying this because I want to stay alive. And I want you to stay alive. And I want to close the prison system. I want to see black people and white people looking at young black and brown males and seeing them with a number across their chest. I want to put a stop to that. But we won't put a stop to that as long as we are convinced that there is such a thing as 4 or 5 different races and one of them is superior to the rest. It's a lie. I didn't know it was a lie. I thought there was something wrong. I knew that Martin Luther King Jr. was right. When I hate to talk about this because it makes me sick to my stomach. I was teaching 3rd grade in Riceville, Iowa. And our lesson plan for April 5th was to learn the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "O Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." Martin Luther King Jr. had been one of our Heroes of the Month in February, along with George Washington, who owned slaves, bought and sold people for money, and Abraham Lincoln, who was our first black president. How many of you didn't know that? Abraham Lincoln was part black, part white, and part Cherokee Indian. Abraham Lincoln was our first black president. How many of you learned that in school? That's what I thought. How many of you think you should have learned that in school? How many of you think that's an important historic fact? Yeah, folks. So the next time somebody says, well, we've had our first black president, you say, I'll bet you remember him, don't you? You look about 200 years old, fool. People, it's time to get rid of the myth. It's time to get rid of the idea that the only people who did or contributed important things on this earth, and particularly in this country, were white males. Next time you think of a white male, think of W. No, don't think of W. Well, he's pretty bad. We used to do this, remember? Because this looks like a W. He and his wife would get up on the stage and they'd do this. And I did that at a college one day, and a kid said, Miss Sally, you better stop doing that. I said, why? He said, because that means read between the lines. I never thought of it. So the next college I went to, I told them that, and they all just howled. And I told them that the next one I went to. Within 2 weeks, the Bushes had stopped doing this. So if there are any young Republicans in this group, stand so that we can salute you. You like that, don't you? You need to realize that in this country we elect people not on the basis of how well they can serve or how well they can govern, but how much money they've got to get there. The only color that really matters in this country is the color of money, greed. And it's time to realize that. But Martin Luther King Jr. had been one of our heroes of the month. For me, Martin Luther King Jr. stood for hope. And for me, the word hope is an acronym for holding on to positive energy. Because that's what Martin Luther King Jr. did. And we were going to study him, and we had studied him. And I went to my house on April 4th. After school, I had the teepee under my arm that my previous year's third graders had made. We were going to put it up in my classroom the next day. We were going to paint it with Indian symbols chosen by white folks. We were going to sing Indian songs written by white folks. We were going to read Indian poetry written by white folks. By the shores of Gitche Gumee, by the shining big sea waters. How many of you remember that poem? How many of you never heard of it before in your life? That's what I thought. How many of you have never heard the poem Hiawatha? Oh my God. And you go to school? No, you don't. You go to a place where you are entertained all day, or where you are babysat with all day, because we don't have time to educate you. So we just let you sit there and teachers take the money and you don't learn what you should have. You'd ought to thank you very much. You're welcome. Now, don't just thank me, give me money. I'm not sure. He says the check hasn't been written yet, and he says I have to wait until the powers that be decide to pay me. Oh, people, how many of you think it could be a while?
Racism, a malignant force that continues to fester within the veins of society, is not merely a collection of individual prejudices, but a complex system of power and oppression that's a framework that assigns value and worth based on the arbitrary construct of race, creating a hierarchy that privileges whiteness while marginalizing and dehumanizing people of color. This system operates on both overt and covert levels, shaping everything from interpersonal interactions to institutional policies. It's the subtle microaggressions that chip away at a person's sense of belonging, and the systemic barriers that limit opportunities and perpetuate inequality. White supremacy, the insidious ideology that underpins racism, is not confined to the fringes of extremist groups. It's a pervasive worldview that positions whiteness as the norm, the standard of excellence, and the rightful holder of power. It's the unspoken assumption that white experiences are universal, and that deviations from this norm are inherently other. This ideology manifests in countless ways: the whitewashing of history, the underrepresentation of people of color in positions of authority, the disproportionate impact of law enforcement on black communities, and the subtle biases that influence hiring and promotion decisions. It's an invisible force that shapes our perceptions and reinforces existing power structures. The impact of racism is not merely psychological. It's deeply ingrained in the very fabric of our institutions. From education and healthcare to housing and employment, systemic racism creates disparities that perpetuate cycles of poverty, inequality, and injustice. It's the school-to-prison pipeline that disproportionately targets black youth, the redlining policies that deny access to housing in predominantly black neighborhoods, and the implicit biases in healthcare that lead to poorer health outcomes for people of color. This systemic oppression is not a relic of the past. It's a present-day reality that continues to shape the lives of millions. The myth of colorblindness serves as a powerful tool for maintaining the status quo by denying the existence of race. We deny the very real and pervasive impact of racism. This approach allows those in positions of power to absolve themselves of responsibility, perpetuating the illusion that inequality is a matter of individual failings rather than systemic oppression. It ignores the lived experiences of people of color who navigate a world shaped by racial bias and discrimination. Racism thrives on the denial of its own existence. Those who benefit from the system of white supremacy often dismiss claims of racism as playing the race card, or reverse racism. This dismissal serves to silence marginalized voices and maintain the illusion of a level playing field. It's a way of protecting privilege by refusing to acknowledge the very real and ongoing impact of racial inequality. Confronting racism requires more than just condemning individual acts of prejudice. It demands a critical examination of the systems and structures that perpetuate inequality. It requires us to challenge our own biases, to dismantle the myths and stereotypes that reinforce racial hierarchies, and to actively work towards creating a more just and equitable society. It's about shifting the focus from individual culpability to collective responsibility. The burden of dismantling racism should not fall solely on the shoulders of those who are marginalized and oppressed. Those who benefit from white privilege have a responsibility to use their position to challenge the status quo. This involves amplifying marginalized voices, advocating for policy changes, and actively working to dismantle the systems that perpetuate inequality. True progress requires a fundamental shift in our understanding of race and power. It demands that we move beyond superficial gestures of tolerance and engage in meaningful dialogue about the root causes of racial inequality. It requires a commitment to dismantling the structures that perpetuate oppression and creating a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their race. The fight against racism is an ongoing struggle, a marathon rather than a sprint. It requires constant vigilance, unwavering commitment, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. It demands a collective effort to dismantle the systems of oppression and create a society where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Ultimately, dismantling racism is not just a moral imperative. It's a matter of social justice. It's about creating a society where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential, free from the constraints of prejudice and discrimination. It's about building a future where race is not a barrier to opportunity, but a source of strength and diversity.